Most people are ashamed of their own pace. They think they're late, that life is passing them by, that everyone else already got there, except them. And it's funny, because the more they try to run, the more they seem to fall behind. Maybe you've felt this too, that bitter sensation of moving too slowly, as if the whole world were advancing while you're still struggling to get off the ground. But here's the part nobody has the courage to say out loud. Your slow pace is exactly what will save you. Yes, counterintuitive, almost controversial, but deeply true. Because those who run too fast stumble. Those who accelerate without foundation collapse. Those who seek instant transformation run out of breath. But those who walk at their own pace build something no fast result can ever deliver. Density, depth, internal structure. And I know it hurts to look around and see people moving faster. What you don't see is that most are building castles in the sand, beautiful on the outside, fragile on the inside, while you, even slowly, are laying bricks no one notices. And guess what? Bricks sustain, appearances don't. It's exactly this slow, almost timid pace that's creating inside you a strength that only appears in those who endure, that firm calm that doesn't break, that discipline that doesn't collapse, that consistency that doesn't fail. The truth is simple. A slow pace isn't a flaw, it's a strategy. But almost nobody understands this. Most people want shortcuts, explosions, fast results. Few accept the real path. Few have the maturity to walk at their own pace. And it's those few, always those few, who get where most never reach. And if you're here, maybe you're part of that group. Maybe you feel like you're slow, but deep down, you know you need to continue. Maybe you're frustrated, but still refuse to give up. Maybe you're exhausted, but you still show up. And that already tells a lot about you. Much more than you imagine. But calm down. There's something even deeper, sharper, and more transformative waiting for you throughout this journey. Because if you truly accept that your slow pace is an advantage, not a problem, your entire life starts to change. He quickly realizes that everyone wants to change their life, but almost no one accepts paying the price of time. And it's curious, because when someone begins a journey of growth, the first impact is always the same, the reality that there are no shortcuts. It's in this shock that he understands that relentless consistency is not something glamorous. It's silent. And yet, it's precisely this silence that prepares the stage for a deeper identity shift. Deep down, he feels that this long road is what finally awakens his long-term discipline inner strength. Sometimes he looks back and thinks about how much he wished everything could be fast, almost magical, as if his life had a secret skip stage button. But as he moves forward, he realizes that time is the only teacher that accepts no bribe. It shows that a process mindset is not born on good days, but on repeated and monotonous ones that many avoid. And this realization hurts, because it demands maturity. Still, it's exactly this pain that shapes the new identity emerging within him. He also notices how the modern world tries to deceive those who are starting. People seem to evolve overnight, as if they had unlocked an invisible code. But when he looks closely, he sees that real growth requires a long cycle. It's like planting. No one digs the soil today expecting to eat the fruit tomorrow. Time is the guardian of this process, and whoever tries to pressure it ends up frustrated. That's why he begins to value the journey, not just the destination. And when he wakes up early, even tired, he feels he's taking small steps in the right direction, even if no one sees. This kind of action creates something inside him, a long-term discipline inner strength that no longer depends on fleeting motivation. Little by little, he notices that each silent repetition is shaping his new version. And with that, he realizes that true transformation never happens with haste. It drips slowly, but firmly, like water carving stone. As the days go by, he sees that his anxiety decreases when he accepts time as an ally. He stops fighting the clock and begins walking with it. It's almost poetic. The more he respects time, the more time respects him. And this changes something inside him, something only those who felt this awakening understand. It's the beginning of an internal transition, almost imperceptible, but powerful, toward an inevitable identity shift. He remembers a simple piece of advice he once heard. If it's going to take time, let it take time with you doing your part. And that stuck in his mind. So instead of complaining, he began acting. Small daily readings, like The Power of Habit or Mindset, became bricks in this construction. And it was at this pace that he understood that a process mindset isn't about speed, but about presence, showing up even on bad days. During the weeks, he sees examples in his own life, proving how real this rule is. He tried training 3 times a week and always quit, until he decided to train every day for 20 minutes. The result? His body began changing slowly, but consistently. This is the power of relentless consistency. It makes you win through repetition, not explosion. And surprisingly, this makes everything lighter. He also notices that great achievements, from learning English to investing well, were never about speed. They're about patience and continuity. Someone who studies English 30 minutes a day beats someone who studies 7 hours on a single Sunday of motivation. Someone who invests little but always wins over someone who tries to get rich fast. This vision calms his mind and gives him clarity. Time is not an enemy, it's a partner. And when he thinks of giving up, he remembers that every seed spends weeks in the dark before breaking through the soil. This helps him understand that maybe he too is in this underground phase, building invisible roots. It's strange but comforting. He begins to feel that something inside him is aligning, as if time were preparing him for something greater. And this thought opens room for even deeper questions, the kind that connect directly to the next point of this journey. He observes how today's culture sells a seductive fantasy. Everything must be fast, automatic, instant. People want to change their lives in 30 days, transform their bodies in 4 weeks, get rich without study, without strategy, without relentless consistency. And this chase for urgency creates a silent anxiety that corrodes the soul. He realizes that when someone enters this race, they start thinking they're falling behind. But that's exactly where the identity shift doesn't happen, because there's no process, only haste. And it's curious to notice how social media amplifies this illusion. He sees people celebrating huge results as if they appeared overnight, but they never show the slow and tedious part of the construction. This creates an unfair, almost cruel comparison. And whoever believes in this begins to doubt their own path. But when he looks deeper, he realizes that all of this goes completely against the long-term discipline inner strength that truly transforms someone from the inside out. He remembers how many sabotage themselves by believing in this fast success. The person starts a diet expecting to lose 10 kilos in a week, and when that doesn't happen, they quit on the second day. It's always the same cycle. Unrealistic expectations leading to frustration. And in that moment, he takes a deep breath and understands that a process mindset is the antidote to this trap, because the process doesn't promise magic. It promises real evolution. He uses a simple example: learning to invest. Those who seek quick money fall into scams. Those who seek knowledge, patience, and consistency prosper. He started by reading books like The Intelligent Investor and realized there is no safe shortcut. It's fascinating how this principle applies to everything: body, mind, career, business. The illusion of the instant is always a door to disappointment, but the slow truth, that one produces solid results. Sometimes he sees friends giving up on incredible projects because they didn't go viral in a week. It's like building a castle and tearing it down just because someone didn't clap fast enough. He realizes this kills dreams before they even start. And it's there that he reinforces inside himself the importance of relentless consistency, because it protects the mind from this desperate rush. After all, speed doesn't sustain, but consistency always sustains. He begins to notice that behind the illusion of the instant lies a deep fear, the fear of not being good enough if the result takes too long. But this fear exists only because people compare themselves to edited versions of other people's lives. He decides to reject this toxic logic. Instead, he connects with his own journey, his own truth, his own pace. And this strengthens his identity shift, creating space for a more mature version of himself. In his most reflective moments, he almost laughs at this culture of speed. Because when he looks at any real success story, athletes, writers, entrepreneurs, all of them have a past marked by years of anonymity and work. No exceptions. He realizes the world only shows the stage, but hides the backstage. And that's why a process mindset becomes his north. He doesn't want the show. He wants the construction. He then starts teaching this to other people. When someone comes asking for a quick tip to change their life, he responds with the same firm sincerity. There is no quick tip. There is daily discipline. At first, some find it strange, but later they understand. And when they understand, something powerful happens. Anxiety evaporates and gives place to calm. A calm that strengthens long-term discipline inner strength like few things can. And even understanding all of this, he knows that the next trap waits right ahead. The difficulty of accepting that it's the process, not the result, that truly shapes who he becomes. It's as if life were preparing him to see the next level of this journey, the one that reveals where the real change happens, even when no one is watching. He begins to understand that the real magic isn't in the final trophy, but in the path he walks to get there. And the more he deepens this perception, the more he realizes that every morning he wakes up early, even without motivation, he is building a layer of his new identity. It's curious how the process seems invisible at first, but over time it shapes his personality like a silent sculptor. And that's where relentless consistency stops being a task and becomes who he is. Little by little, he feels an identity shift happening quietly. He notices that while many are enchanted by the shine of the result, few have the courage to love the path. But it's precisely in the path that he learns patience, discipline, and above all, long-term discipline inner strength. Because the process, unlike the result, doesn't lie. It reveals his weaknesses, his distractions, his fears, and forces him to deal with them. This confrontation is uncomfortable, but essential. Without it, no growth would be real. When he thinks about silent routines, like studying even when tired or training when life feels heavy, he realizes these moments are what build invisible muscles, resilience, clarity, and consistency. He begins to see the process as a strict but fair mentor, and each daily repetition that seems small is actually a seed planted in the fertile soil of his new version. And this strengthens his process mindset even more. He remembers when he tried to learn English and always quit around the third week, until he understood that waiting for motivation was useless. He began studying every day, even if just for 15 minutes. That's when the language began to enter. The result? It came later. But who he became during the process, someone more disciplined, focused, committed, was worth far more than any certificate. The process shaped him before the result rewarded him. He also realizes this at the gym. He'd always see people trying to transform their bodies in 1 month. But those who showed up silently every day, without making noise, were the ones who really changed. He started adopting that rhythm, and over time, saw that the process didn't just transform the physical, it transformed his mindset. Long-term discipline inner strength became natural, almost automatic. And that's what the process does. It creates better versions of those who stay consistent. In a moment of clarity, he understands that the final result, money, physique, professional success, is just a distant echo of everything he does daily. The result doesn't create anyone. The path does. And when he realizes this, everything becomes lighter. He stops expecting something grand every day and starts being proud of small steps. Because he knows the process is working, even when the eyes don't see it. He also sees that mistakes are simply part of the process. Before, he thought making mistakes meant he was doing poorly. Now he realizes making mistakes means he's learning. When he fails, he adjusts. When he succeeds, he repeats. And this cycle creates a mental structure that's almost unshakable. He begins trusting his own routine because it carries the energy of relentless consistency. And that trust by itself has the power to shape someone deeply. And as days pass, he becomes more conscious of his choices. He no longer acts out of impulse, but out of purpose. He no longer lives from emotional explosions, but from solid decisions. He notices his mind becoming clearer and his identity more aligned with who he wants to be. And this didn't happen in one epic moment. It happened in the process, in the silent accumulation of small daily actions. And even understanding all this, he knows there is an even more powerful force behind transformation, persistence. Because understanding the process is one thing, staying inside it when nothing seems to change is something entirely different. And that's where the next point of the journey begins to take shape, and he feels he's about to face the most demanding part of this path. He begins to realize that persistence is not about strength, but about permanence. It's not about winning quickly, but about continuing even when everything feels slow, heavy, or silent. Most people quit because they confuse lack of visible results with lack of progress. But he begins to understand that relentless consistency is exactly this, doing what needs to be done even when the world says it's not worth it. And in this silent process, an identity shift begins to sprout inside him. He looks around and sees how people want immediate results. They start excited, but any difficulty becomes a reason to pull back. He realizes this behavior is the real barrier, not lack of talent, but lack of continuity. And when he understands this, he decides to act differently. He commits to showing up even without motivation, because he knows long-term discipline inner strength is not born on easy days. It grows through friction, and over time, he learns that persistence has no glamour. It doesn't get likes, doesn't go viral, doesn't earn applause. Persistence lives in the shadows, while results shine on the stage. And that's why so many ignore it. But he begins to find beauty in this hidden process. Each day he doesn't quit. He becomes someone more resistant, more prepared. And this silent strength is what sustains his entire process mindset. In moments of doubt, he remembers simple examples, like the guy who goes to the gym for 3 months and complains that nothing changed. Or the person who starts a YouTube channel and quits the next week because the videos didn't blow up. He sees it clearly. The problem is not skill, it's lack of persistence. And this perception moves him. He decides to be the type of person who continues when others stop. He also understands that persisting is not insisting on mistakes, but adjusting the path without abandoning the destination. It's like a sailor who changes his route when the wind changes, but never loses sight of the final point. This flexibility strengthens him. He realizes life rewards those who know how to insist intelligently. And when he integrates this, long-term discipline inner strength becomes emotional armor. Sometimes he himself wanted to quit, on days when nothing seemed to make sense. But when he thought about stopping, he remembered how far he had already come. The thought that sustained him was simple. If I stop now, I'll have to start from zero again. That reignited his process mindset. He understood that persistence is not blind resistance. It is respect for the path already built. And that kept him moving. He also discovers that persistence generates confidence. Every time he keeps a promise to himself, even a small one, he reinforces his identity. It's as if his mind says, I can trust you. And this internal trust is one of the pillars of any real identity shift. It gives the body a different posture, the voice more firmness, decisions more courage. Persistence builds character. In some moments, he even laughs at how people believe that quitting solves something. When they quit, the problem doesn't disappear. It just returns bigger. And he sees the advantage of facing discomfort now, while it's small. Persistence, then, becomes not only a skill but a life strategy. He understands that those who endure longer always go further, even if they start last. And as he matures this perspective, he realizes there is an even deeper, rarely discussed factor. Most progress happens when no one notices, not even him. It is in that invisible phase that the real world begins to be built. And this discovery opens the doors to the next chapter of this internal journey. He begins to notice that the most powerful growth is exactly the one no one sees, not even himself. It's strange, almost uncomfortable, because we live trying to measure everything. Weight, money, followers, numbers. But true growth ignores any ruler. It is born slowly, silently, discreetly. And it's in this silence that relentless consistency becomes his greatest ally. Planting deep roots, while the world thinks nothing is happening. He realizes that many confuse lack of evidence with lack of evolution. But invisible growth is like emotional musculature. You only notice it when you need it. Small daily actions, so small they seem useless, accumulate inside him like invisible bricks. This accumulation awakens a subtle, almost imperceptible identity shift. And when he finally realizes it, he is no longer the person who started. Sometimes he catches himself thinking he's stuck. But when he looks at habits that used to be impossible and today feel natural, he understands. He grew. Waking up early, training, studying, avoiding distractions. All of this became routine, not effort. This transformation is the reflection of his long-term discipline inner strength blooming inside. And in this, he feels proud of himself, even if no one saw this construction. He remembers everyday examples, like someone who starts playing guitar and spends weeks thinking they're not improving, until one day they realize their fingers now move naturally. Or someone studying for a public exam who thinks they are lost, until they solve questions that once seemed impossible. He sees patterns, always the same. Growth arrives late, masked, silent, but it arrives. He also understands that the human mind loves quick rewards. But when he learns to value invisible progress, he begins seeing value in things he once ignored. Simple habits, small victories, tiny adjustments. It's in these details that his process mindset strengthens. And the more he appreciates this, the more he notices he is shaping a life that doesn't depend on external applause to continue. Watching friends, he sees how many give up right when they're about to break through the invisible stage. They don't realize that most growth happens before results appear. And this reinforces even more his determination. He wants to be the one who remains, the one who crosses the dark tunnel knowing there is light, even if the light is not yet visible. He also realizes that invisible growth creates something that quick results never could: depth, a kind of strength that doesn't tremble at the first difficulty. This strength is the long-term discipline inner strength that accumulates over time, like water filling a reservoir. One day it overflows, but until that day comes, he continues filling it, drop by drop, action by action. And when he finally notices some external change, a compliment, a breakthrough, a sign, he understands that it's just the late reflection of months of unseen effort. The world sees the tip of the iceberg, but he knows exactly the size of what he built underneath. This makes him calmer, more centered, more patient. It's as if he had discovered a secret few have the courage to experience. And deep down, he knows he will still face another challenging stage. Because between where he is and where he wants to be, there's a discomforting space full of doubts and uncertainties. And this space, this painful interval, is about to become his next great teacher. He begins to understand that there's a space between who he is and who he wants to be. And that space hurts. It's a strange, uncomfortable, almost suffocating interval. In this stretch of the journey, nothing seems to make sense. He feels doubts, insecurities, frustrations, and the worst part, the sensation of wasting time. But it's exactly here that relentless consistency becomes a shield, keeping him standing when his mind tries to pull him down. It's in this place that his identity shift begins to be truly tested. He realizes that the pain of the interval is not a sign that he's on the wrong path, but that he's evolving. Because growing hurts, changing hurts, replacing old patterns with new habits hurts. And this pain stares him in the face every day as an uncomfortable reminder. You are no longer who you were, but you are not yet who you will be. And as uncomfortable as it is, this pain is the mark of long-term discipline inner strength sprouting inside him. At certain moments, he even thinks about quitting. The human mind hates gray zones, hates waiting, hates the absence of results. But when he almost gives in, he remembers stories like Thomas Edison's, who went through thousands of failures before a single victory. And that memory calms him. He understands that a process mindset is exactly this: crossing the pain with patience and resilience, accepting that the interval is an essential part of the construction. He also finds himself comparing his journey with others, and that hurts even more. Seeing people apparently getting there faster makes the interval feel even longer. But when he looks closely, he realizes that every journey has its own clock. He learns to respect his own, and in that learning, he regains his calm, his direction, his strength. Comparison is poison, but presence is the cure. He begins to see the pain as emotional training. Just like lifting weights hurts the muscle to strengthen it, this interval hurts his mind to prepare it. He starts treating each discomfort as an internal exercise. When anxiety hits, he breathes deeply. When frustration appears, he writes. When fear shows up, he acts anyway. Small practices that, repeated, create psychological muscles. And when he feels stuck, He chooses to move in small ways. Read 10 pages, walk 15 minutes, clean the environment, study for half an hour. He understands that action cures stagnation, and each microaction is proof that his long-term discipline inner strength is taking control. He begins to see that persisting not only keeps him on the path, it reduces the pain, because those who act suffer less than those who wait. He has already realized that this interval is emotionally turbulent. Some days he feels like he's flying. On others, he feels like he's sinking. But now he understands, this is normal. This oscillation is part of the process. And accepting this movement makes him lighter. He stops fighting the phase and begins crossing it with more serenity. And the more he accepts it, the stronger he becomes. He also discovers that the pain of the interval hides a gift, because this stretch is where he builds his patience, his consistency, his capacity to continue even without clarity. This stretch shapes his process mindset like nothing else could. And when he looks at himself honestly, he realizes that this interval is shaping his identity in a deep way. And it is precisely at this moment, when he finally accepts slowness, discomfort, and uncertainty, that a new understanding arises. Perhaps the key is not to run faster, but to accept the slow pace with wisdom. And this perception opens the path to the next theme of the journey. He begins to realize that accepting a slow pace is not a sign of weakness, but of maturity. It's the deep understanding that nothing great is born fast. He feels a strange calm when he finally admits to himself that he doesn't control the speed of results, only his actions. And this perception brings him even closer to relentless consistency, because it stops being a requirement and becomes wisdom, a wisdom that silently sustains his identity shift. He notices how the modern world idolizes speed, as if quickness were synonymous with value. Everyone wants everything now, immediately. But when he observes the greatest human constructions, big businesses, great physiques, great minds, he sees that all of them carry a slow, almost patient journey. He understands, then, that long-term discipline inner strength develops exactly at this slower rhythm. Haste, in truth, has never been anyone's ally. He remembers personal experiences. When he tried to learn something too fast, he always got frustrated. But when he respected the time, the learning fit naturally. It's like planting. There's no point pulling the sprout to make it grow faster. It will break. He realizes that a process mindset is exactly accepting this metaphor in real life. Solid growth is slow, and those who try to accelerate pay dearly with anxiety and quitting. He begins to see that accepting slowness removes a huge weight from his shoulders. Anxiety decreases, breathing returns to normal, thoughts become clearer. He starts planning better, acting better, living better. The calm that emerges from this acceptance doesn't make him passive. On the contrary, it makes him more active and focused. It's as if his energy stops being drained by haste and starts being directed toward productive actions. He observes people who quit exactly because they expect speed. They confuse slowness with incapacity. But he, now more conscious, perceives that slowness is simply part of the construction. He sees friends who started training together. Some quit in weeks because results were slow. Others continued, and today enjoy visible changes. He finally understands that winners are not the fastest. They are the ones who remain. He also realizes how accepting slowness strengthens the mind. When someone accepts that something takes time, that person stops seeking urgent rewards and begins building lasting habits. He feels his own mind aligning with this principle, and he is surprised by the tranquility this generates inside him. Long-term discipline inner strength becomes more stable, solid, almost unshakable. In many moments, he notices that the speed of results is not under his control. He doesn't control if the video will go viral, if the project will explode, if the return will be immediate. But he controls something much more important, his daily presence. He controls his effort, his posture, his discipline. And when he realizes this, he understands that his real strength is not in the result, but in the constant pace, even if slow. He then decides to embrace slowness as part of the path. He starts telling himself, "What's mine will arrive in my time." This phrase, repeated on the hardest mornings, becomes almost a mantra, and this mantra keeps him firm when everything feels delayed. He understands that accepting slowness doesn't speed up the process, but decreases the pain of waiting, which is already a massive victory. And when he finally internalizes this truth, something new begins to grow inside him, the understanding that it's exactly this daily, slow, constant discipline that builds the person he will become. And this realization opens the door to the next point of the journey, the one where discipline stops being a ritual and becomes identity. He begins to understand that discipline is not a tool. It is the very structure of the person he is becoming. Every time he shows up, even tired, even unwilling, he realizes he is reinforcing an inner part he didn't even know existed. It's almost as if a stronger version of himself were being built silently behind simple day-to-day choices. And this version is born directly from the relentless consistency he practices. He notices that daily discipline does not depend on motivation. In fact, the less he depends on motivation, the freer he becomes. He wakes up early not because he's inspired, but because he decided to be someone who honors commitments. Studying tired becomes a test for himself. Training without willingness becomes proof of long-term discipline inner strength. He realizes discipline is not shaping only his actions. It is shaping his identity. When he observes extremely successful people, he sees they all have something in common. They show up every single day, even when they're not well, even when no one sees. And this reinforces something important. Discipline is more a decision than a feeling. Once he understands this, he feels his identity shift becoming more solid, as if stamping his new self with each daily repetition. He also discovers that discipline is a silent form of self-respect. Every time he keeps a promise made to himself, he sends a message to his brain. I can trust you. This trust changes everything. It improves posture, increases emotional stability, and makes thinking more organized. He realizes discipline doesn't just make him stronger on the outside. It builds a resistant process mindset on the inside. He starts applying discipline to small daily rituals. Reading 10 pages, studying 20 minutes, training even if lightly, organizing the environment, planning the day. Simple things, but consistent. And he realizes that these habits, when added together, create a solid foundation for any objective. He understands that discipline doesn't speed up time. It fills time intelligently, and that changes the entire trajectory. He also sees that when he is disciplined, he becomes immune to external chaos. Problems appear, distractions appear, fatigue appears, but he continues. This continuity creates a mental strength that people around him notice, but don't understand. He seems calm, firm, focused. And this firmness didn't come from one epic moment, but from hundreds of ordinary moments when he chose discipline over comfort. He notices that discipline is what transforms who he is today into who he will be years from now. It is a bridge built daily. Each disciplined decision is a brick, and while laying those bricks, he begins to see a future version of himself that is wiser, stronger, more resilient. He understands that no one becomes great by accident. It is always discipline added to time. He also realizes that discipline protects him from emotional relapses. When life tightens, instead of collapsing, he leans on routine. Instead of losing direction, he follows the plan. And this keeps him moving, even when the whole world seems stuck. He understands that this emotional stability exists only because his long-term discipline inner strength is active every day. And when he internalizes all of this, he realizes that discipline builds identity, and identity determines destiny. And at this point, he begins to perceive another silent danger, unrealistic expectations that can destroy this construction before it blooms. He begins to realize that unrealistic expectations are one of the biggest enemies of evolution. It's as if the mind creates a perfect movie with fast, easy, grand results, and anything outside that script becomes frustration. He sees that this destroys his relentless consistency, because no one can maintain discipline while believing that progress should be immediate. And when this expectation collapses, it's as if a poorly formed identity shift breaks inside him. He notices how many people are slaves to this illusion. They start excited, imagining gigantic results in a few days. But when the real world appears, slow, concrete, demanding, they quit. He understands that this quitting doesn't happen because of incapability. but because of wrong expectations. The truth is that long-term discipline inner strength only flourishes when the person adjusts what they expect from the process. He remembers when he tried to change his life in 30 days. He tried to train every day, eat perfectly, study for hours, but a single failure made him feel like everything was ruined. This happens because unrealistic expectations create emotional pressure impossible to sustain. He learned the hard way that a process mindset requires patience with falls, mistakes, and bad days. Unrealistic expectations allow none of that. He observes friends who start businesses expecting to become rich in 6 months, or start a YouTube channel expecting to go viral in the first week. And when none of that happens, they conclude it's not for me. He sees the problem clearly. It's not lack of talent, it's excess of expectation. He learns from others' mistakes and starts adjusting his vision, expecting less from the result and more from himself. He also realizes that unrealistic expectations create anxiety. The person looks at the future and imagines something huge, but when comparing it to the present, feels fear, shame, inadequacy. He understands that this anxiety comes from a lack of alignment between dream and reality. And when he begins aligning these two worlds, his mind becomes lighter, more focused, more stable. This strengthens his long-term discipline inner strength even more. In moments of introspection, he realizes that unrealistic expectations also steal joy from the process. The person doesn't celebrate small victories because they expect something gigantic. They don't recognize their own effort because they only look at what's missing. He decides to break this cycle. He begins to value each small improvement, a better workout, a new habit, a page read, a skill learned. These micro-victories feed his process mindset. He begins applying a simple rule. If I cannot control the result, I won't create expectations about it. This changes everything. Instead of imagining grand scenarios, he focuses on daily actions. Instead of expecting perfection, he honors presence. This strategic humility decreases frustration and increases consistency. And slowly, he notices his identity becoming stronger, firmer, more resistant to emotional collapse. He observes that unrealistic expectations often come from the ego. The ego wants to be special, wants to believe it will be faster than everyone else. But life doesn't work that way. He learns that real results come to those who work at the right rhythm, not to those who dream of shortcuts. And this understanding makes him more mature, more prepared, more shielded. He finally sees that the ego is the enemy of consistency. And when he integrates this lesson into his heart, he understands another fundamental truth. It is not bursts of motivation that change a life, but the accumulation of small, constant steps, a truth the next topic will deepen even further. He begins to realize that intense motivation is beautiful, but temporary. Small, consistent steps, those are unstoppable. He understands that a big burst of energy rarely changes someone's life, but simple actions, repeated for months and years, build solid results. It's at this point that relentless consistency reveals itself as the true transformative force, the one that truly sustains a lasting identity shift. He observes how most people act on impulses. Monday they start with everything, perfect diet, insane training, intense studying. But by Friday they're exhausted, frustrated, and quitting. He understands this is the cycle of explosions, cycles that drain energy and deliver no evolution. But micro-actions, on the other hand, strengthen long-term discipline inner strength day after day. Without dramatization, he begins applying this in real life. Instead of trying to read an entire book in 3 days, he reads 10 pages a day. Instead of trying to train 2 hours, he trains 20 minutes every day. Instead of studying a marathon of content, he studies 30 minutes with focus. And he notices something fascinating. Small actions create more progress than big peaks of effort. He understands that a process mindset is about intelligent repetition, not impulsive intensity. He remembers when he tried to change his life all at once. He wanted to start several habits simultaneously and failed at all of them. It was only when he decided to implement one habit at a time, slowly, consistently, that he began seeing real results. This teaches him that sustainable growth is built like a staircase, one step at a time, not like a risky jump that promises quickness, but delivers a fall. He also observes how small consistent actions have something big explosions never will. Stability. Emotional bursts drain, but small steps feed. He realizes he can maintain a small step even on bad days because it doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. And this presence strengthens his long-term discipline inner strength like nothing else could. He begins noticing patterns. People who do a little for a long time outperform people who do a lot for a short time. The guy who studies English 15 minutes a day speaks better than the one who studies 7 hours on a single Sunday. The person who invests $50 every month builds more wealth than someone who tries to invest once and never again. Small steps win because they are sustainable. He also realizes that small steps create inner confidence. Every time he completes a simple action, his brain records it as a victory. This sequence of tiny victories creates a cycle of self-confidence that feeds his identity shift. He stops being someone who tries to change and becomes someone who fulfills what he decides. A radical change born from movements almost invisible. Observing his routine, he notices that his small steps changed everything over the months. There was no magical moment, no epic leap. There was only daily presence. And this presence is what built his process mindset, making it more solid and resistant. He finally understands why big explosions impress, but small steps transform. And at this point, he recognizes that there is a silent law governing all evolution. Nothing great happens at once. Everything is accumulated, day after day, week after week. And this law opens the path to the next topic of the journey, where he will understand that success is, above all, a sum. He begins to realize that nothing great happens all at once. Every victory is the result of dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of microactions accumulated over time. It's as if success were a safe that only opens after countless small deposits. He understands that relentless consistency is what keeps this safe filling, while his identity shift strengthens silently. He notices that people like to say, "It was luck," when someone achieves something big. But when he looks deeper, he sees there's no luck, there is accumulation. It's the student who studies 30 minutes a day and one day gets an excellent grade. It's the content creator who posts for months in anonymity and one day goes viral. It's the investor who contributes a small amount every month and, years later, has solid wealth. This accumulation is driven by long-term discipline inner strength. He begins observing his own life. He realizes that real changes didn't come from explosive moments, but from small actions repeated over a long period. Every reading, every workout, every study session, every attempt, every disciplined day, all of this adds up. He understands that a process mindset is exactly this: the ability to see value in what seems small, because the small adds to the small until it becomes great. He remembers when he tried to play guitar. It seemed impossible at first, but after weeks of short practices, he realized his fingers now moved naturally. Nothing changed from one day to the next, but everything changed after many consecutive days. He perceives that this is the mathematics of accumulation, slow, silent, but infallible. He also observes that this accumulation is not only technical, but emotional. Every time he chooses to act even when tired, his self-confidence increases. Every time he keeps his routine, he reinforces his disciplined identity. Every time he chooses focus over distraction, he strengthens his long-term discipline inner strength. And this strength doesn't appear in the mirror, but it appears in life. He begins to value the path much more than the destination, because he understands that if he keeps accumulating small actions, the result is inevitable. Accumulation creates inevitability. He starts seeing success as a natural progression, almost mathematical. It doesn't depend on moods, luck, or motivation. It depends on adding. He sees that those who accumulate correctly almost always win without noticing. It's when someone looks and says, "How did you improve so much?" He smiles, because he knows the answer is never a single action, but hundreds of them. He understands that this invisibility of accumulation is exactly what protects the construction. No one sees it, no one interferes. He also realizes that this constant accumulation creates a type of internal alignment that didn't exist before. His thoughts become clearer, his decisions firmer, his goals more defined. His identity shifts from someone who hopes for results to someone who produces results. He feels his identity shift becoming more and more natural. And when he internalizes this truth, he feels deep down that he is approaching a decisive moment. Because all consistent accumulation, at some point in the journey, awakens something powerful, the turning point. And this is exactly what the next topic begins to reveal. He begins to realize that there is an almost magical point in the journey, a moment when everything starts to fit. It's not luck, not a miracle, not coincidence. It's silent accumulation, finally overflowing. He notices that the relentless consistency that once seemed fruitless now begins to produce signs. Small but clear. And these signs awaken inside him an identity shift that becomes impossible to ignore. He observes how people around him begin noticing something different. His way of speaking changes. His posture changes. His focus changes. They can't explain it, but they sense something has evolved in him. And this is a direct result of the long-term discipline inner strength built over months. He understands that the turning point doesn't start on the outside. It starts on the inside, when his mindset finally crosses the boundary between trying to change and changed. He remembers several small moments that preceded this turning point. Waking up even without desire, studying when tired, training when no one was watching. None of those moments seemed big at the time, but now he realizes they were the ones that paved the way. The process mindset that once required effort now happens naturally, as if his brain had been reprogrammed. He begins to notice something curious. Results accelerate after identity changes. Before, everything felt slow, heavy dragged. Now, things that used to be difficult feel simple. There's more clarity, more focus, more energy. He understands that life doesn't change when the result arrives. It changes when the identity changes. The result only confirms what was already growing inside him. He also realizes that the turning point is never a single moment. It's a collection of small signs. A conversation where he expresses himself better. A decision made with more maturity. A task completed without procrastination. These signs show that he is no longer fighting against himself. He is working in favor of himself. Internal resistance decreases and movement becomes natural. He observes that this turning point happens to those who remain. Most never reach it because they give up before. He recalls all the times he almost stopped and feels grateful for not stopping, because now he understands. The turning point is reserved for the resilient, for those who crossed boredom, doubt, fatigue, and silence, for those who kept relentless consistency alive even when it felt useless. He also feels a real increase in self-confidence. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. He knows the path he walked, knows the price he paid, knows the change he built. This confidence makes his actions firmer and his objectives clearer. His long-term discipline inner strength now guides his steps like an internal GPS. He realizes that the turning point creates a new sensation, inevitability. He no longer hopes it will work. He knows it will work, because now he understands that the result is only the natural consequence of the process. This deep change makes him walk with more lightness, less fear, and more direction. He is, in fact, becoming a new person. And when he finally embraces this feeling of internal turning, he realizes something even greater. The journey doesn't end here. There's one final gift reserved for those who cross everything, the reward of those who endure. And that is exactly what the next topic reveals. He begins to understand that the reward never comes to those who start strong. It comes to those who continue even when weak. This realization changes everything, because now he sees that relentless consistency is not just a daily practice, but an emotional commitment to his own evolution. Each day, he doesn't quit, even when everything feels slow, reinforces his identity shift, and solidifies his new inner version. He realizes that life rewards those who remain, not those who explode. It's almost poetic. Those who keep their pace, even if small, end up going further than those who try to sprint for only a phase. He understands that long-term discipline inner strength grows precisely on the days when willingness doesn't appear. And the more he gets through those days, the more prepared he becomes to receive what he seeks. He also notices that the world begins responding differently. Opportunities appear. People notice. Doors open. But he knows this doesn't happen because he got lucky. It happens because he continued when many stopped. It's as if the universe tested his determination before releasing any reward. And he finally understands why a process mindset is so valuable. It makes him worthy of what he desires. He observes that most of the path was invisible, silent, solitary. And even so, he continued. That makes him different from the majority. While many need applause to keep going, he learned to walk in the total absence of validation. This trait strengthens him from the inside and creates a deep, almost unbeatable confidence. He realizes that those who endure silence gain a strength that no one can take away. He remembers all the times he doubted himself, all the nights when he thought about giving up, all the moments he felt far from the goal. Now he looks back and realizes that those moments were exactly the most important, because they were the ones that built his long-term discipline inner strength. He realizes that the pain that made him continue is the same pain that now makes him unbreakable. He reflects on how the reward was never just the material result, money, physique, success. The real reward is who he became while pursuing all of that. He became more patient, stronger, more disciplined, more aware. This internal change is worth more than any external achievement. It's as if his identity had been struck, polished, and refined along the journey. He also notices that the reward doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in details, a new calmness, a silent confidence, a clarity that didn't exist before. It appears in everyday moments like making decisions with firmness, maintaining habits naturally, resisting destructive impulses. It's in these details that he realizes his identity shift is complete, and he now lives the life he once only imagined. And it's curious to notice how, now that the rewards begin to appear, the process stops feeling heavy. He no longer needs to force himself to be disciplined. He is disciplined. He no longer needs to fight against his mind. His mind works with him. He understands that the final reward of the journey is not something he receives, but something he becomes. And that changes absolutely everything. And in this moment of clarity, he realizes that the final lesson is simple. Everything arrives. Everything. Absolutely everything. But it only arrives for those who endure long enough to receive it. And with this deep understanding, he prepares for the next stage. The one you, the viewer, will be invited into through the introduction that came before. You made it this far, and that already says something powerful about you. You are not an ordinary person. Ordinary people quit halfway. Ordinary people run from the truth. Ordinary people prefer speed and excuses. But you stayed, and that means something inside you is ready to truly change. Now the question is simple. What will you do with all this? Because knowing changes nothing. Applying changes everything. And you already know what you need to do. Accept the slow pace. Build every day. Repeat even without desire. Honor the process even in the dark. Life only respects those who act. And now it's your moment. What will you do tomorrow that proves you are committed to this new identity? Stop and think. What habit will you start today? What excuse will you bury now? Which version of yourself will you leave behind? Who do you decide to become after this video? These answers matter, much more than you imagine, because they're the ones that determine whether you continue being a spectator of your own life or the protagonist of your transformation. And let me tell you the truth that few have the courage to say. No one will do this for you. It's you against you, every single day. But the good news? You've already started. The process has already chosen you. And if you walk with relentless consistency, the reward is inevitable. Not because the world will give it to you, but because you will conquer it. You've already seen the entire journey. Now all that's left is to live it. So before you leave, do one thing. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. That way you keep receiving content that keeps your mind aligned, your focus sharp, and your discipline alive. You are not alone on this journey, and I will walk with you step by step. Now tell me in the comments, what is the next step you're going to take? Your answer might be the beginning of your turning point.